Good evening. And as we like to greet people within the Islamic tradition, Salam Alaikum, which means greetings of peace upon you all. My name is Afaf Nasher. I'm an attorney and the executive director for CAIR New York. That's CAIR. It stands for the Council on American Islamic Relations. We're the New York chapter of a national civil rights organization. We do all kinds of civil rights and discriminatory matters, and that involves everything from hate crimes in the streets to immigration policies that are discriminatory, to religious-based bullying in schools, to work discrimination. And there's really such a wide variety, and what I was asked to speak about for 15 minutes is Islamophobia. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very quick overview and introduction on what that actually means to us on a very realistic basis, and then I'm going to tie it into immigration because that is the focus of tonight's talk. So in respect for your time, let me check my time. So Islamophobia is often defined as an irrational fear of Muslims and Islam. And that's easy enough to understand, but I'd like to add another component to that. And that other component is that it's not just an irrational fear, not the way that it's actually realized and implemented. It actually goes beyond that, in the sense that it's not just an irrational fear, but one that implements and is a catalyst for bigotry and discriminatory acts, right? So that's the difference. And how are we seeing Islamophobia being played out? I mentioned some of it because that is some of the work that we do. So very quick facts. When I talk about religious-based bullying based on religion, Islamophobia, generally speaking, the Department of Education nationally tells us that about 12.5% of all students are bullied for all kinds of terrible reasons, which is terrible in and of itself, right? Whether you're not wearing the right shoes, or you have glasses, or you're smart, or whatever the reason is, it's pretty horrendous. But then what we see as Muslims is that double the national average, 24% of Muslims say they are discriminated against at school or bullied specifically because of their religion. So on top of all the other reasons, they are being bullied because of their faith. What does that mean? Realistically, that means that your 11-year-old boy who is coming into school is being called a raghead, Taliban, Osama bin Laden, asked when he's bringing the next bomb into school, as if that's a joke. But it's not a joke, because think about the implications in New York City schools, for example. If a security officer hears that, or a teacher hears that, it becomes a security issue for school. And do you know what that means? That means the security officer reports it to the NYPD because the two are linked. And that means that we have young kids that are being questioned not just by school administration but by law enforcement, and it has happened without a parent present. And that means that law enforcement is now going through a 12-year-old social media without a parent present, and now we're not only fighting the legal implications of all that, but we're also wondering, number one, how about this kid that's been bullied all this time, and where's the protection that they deserve? Number two, how do we fight the potential of criminal activity for a child? And number three, how do you wipe that off of their school record when they've been suspended as such unfairly, and now you're wondering how's that kid going to get into college in a couple of years? So you see how it can get really nasty really quick. And this is just a very small example. We've got hate crimes that have led to murders, unfortunately. And, I can just go on and on about that. But I'm going to switch now. Work discrimination is also another thing. I don't know how many of you know what the percentage of Muslims are in the U.S. They always make it seem as if we're here to take over and everything is going to be some weird, complex ideology that's going to submerge all American ideals and principles. We're 3% of the population. 3%. Now look at it from a workplace discrimination facet. EEOC, not CAIR New York, EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, says that about a quarter of all discriminatory complaints are coming from Muslims. Those are the ones that are facing the biggest discrimination in the workplace. 3%, 24, 25%. Islamophobia is very real in a lot of different ways, but now I'm going to switch gears and talk about immigration because, again, that is the focus of today. Of course, the biggest policy that manifests Islamophobia has been the Muslim ban, right? So the Muslim ban is this ban of several countries, of which the majority are Muslim majority countries, with the exception of Venezuelan diplomats because, for some reason we don't like them, and North Korea, who doesn't let North Koreans come into America anyway. And we got Muslim ban 1.0, which was so blatantly discriminatory, and then 2.0 came, and then 3.0 came, and they kept working on it and polishing it and working on it and polishing it just so that it can survive the very basic of what it needs to survive under some type of scrutiny, right? And so it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and what we have implemented today is not a judgment based on whether or not the intent of the act was discriminatory, because I think if they had really looked at that, and if the Supreme Court had been brave enough to look at that, they would have seen what everybody else sees. But they didn't. And now we have people who are literally, have families here who are citizens, law-abiding in every single way, tax-paying, who cannot bring their spouse in, who cannot bring their children in, who cannot bring their parents in. These are people that have been applying for their families to come in. Take Yemen as an example. I know that community intimately. You have some people from Yemen that have been doing everything they're supposed to do and jumping through hoops for the past 6-7 years. 6-7 years for an application to have their child come in. We have fathers and mothers who have yet to hug their children for the first time. And even in that regard, in which, and there are cases like this, those people applied, went through the extreme vetting that is already in place, and please don't let anyone fool you to make you think that we don't have enough of a vetting process. Everything possible under the moon is already a part of the process. Your DNA, your medical exams, your ID, your history, your certificates, whatever it is that needs to be done. 7-8 years of vetting. And we had people who finally had their piece of paper after all the interviews, the multiple interviews, and said, yes, you're finally going to be united with their family. And then the Muslim ban came, and instead of the appointment in which they were supposed to obtain their visas, they were put into a room like somewhat similar to this, and rather than get their visas, they were simply given a piece of paper that said, no, sorry, you're not getting it. Let's keep going with Yemen. Yemen is a country that is now under war, a war that it did not create for itself in many ways, okay? And so you have this urgency of families trying to extract their loved ones. And because it's in war, the council, the embassy, is closed. So what does that mean for anyone who is trying to apply to get into the United States anyway? That means first they have to take a dangerous journey outside of the country, catch a boat somewhere because airports are closed, go to somewhere else like Djibouti, for example, or Malaysia, and their families have to finance all of this, and they themselves have to risk their lives to get to another American consulate or embassy. And then they go through the years of the application process while their families are financing them. And at the end of the day, they have the door slammed in their face, not because they're a security threat. Yemen has never done anything to the United States. 9/11 is not attached to Yemen, or Somalia, or any of the other countries that are on the list. What I'm trying to tell you is that a lot of discrimination, whether it's based against Muslims or any other subsection of humanity, and we are all one human family, it's always implemented under the guise of security. That, and to be quite blatant, greed. This feeling of entitlement. I am a person of faith, and we are in a house of faith. Regardless of whether or not you are a person of faith, a simple conscience should tell us that that is wrong on every level. But As if that's not enough, one of the things that we are seeing linked to Islamophobia and immigration, right? We always link immigration as immigration, somebody coming in. But let's take it back and even up a notch. As if things couldn't be worse, this administration has now said that they are not content with closing the door on family members of citizens coming in. But now they're also going to investigate files of citizens who have been in this country for 20, 30 years. Have you heard of that one? They are reopening files of U.S. citizens. People who were previously vetted, people who did get interviewed, people who did submit their DNA, and they are reopening files, and it is impacting who do you think? Primarily Muslims and Latinos. These are U.S. citizens. We have cases presently before us in which a U.S. citizen's passport is revoked. They go in to renew their passport and it doesn't come back. A letter comes back instead. No due process. There was no hearing. That's not the Constitution I believed in. That's not the Constitution that I took an oath to uphold. That is not the Constitution that you all took. And so we have this collective responsibility, both individual and collectively, to speak at forums like this, to attend, to teach ourselves and to teach our neighbors, and to link the stories, because it's not unique to the Muslim community, although I can tell you for sure we're amongst the hardest hit in so many ways. But to understand that beyond anything else, it's a human story, and it impacts every single one of us. And for those of you who wish to learn more, our website, www.CAIR-NY.org. My sister, Kay, is here. She brought information, so you can definitely grab some from her. I'm actually traveling, but I really wanted to make it here today so that I can at least meet you, and I hope that you reach out to us, whether it's for a volunteer opportunity or to learn more. CAIR-New York is an organization that's here to serve everyone, whether or not you're Muslim. And I hope you never have to use us to help you in a discriminatory matter, but if you do, understand that we are here for everyone. Faith, no faith, Islamic faith or another. And under any classification. Protected class, I should say. Thank you so much for your time and attention. This is only a very small glimpse of what it looks like day to day. Hopefully I'll have another opportunity to be here and to speak with you all and to learn from you all as well. Thank you again.